Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. This is really great. It's 2018, number 11 year, the year of alignment. And yesterday was a really huge energy upgrade. Um, it was really, really intense for me. My entity and myself opened a portal, and there was a lot of traveling in and out of the portal all day, and it was really intense for my body. And so today's energy is much more chill. It's nice. And someone just commented on a post that I shared by Henry that said that today's energy feels so great. And she said, well, why is it that I feel almost underlining sad and tired? And so as I was answering her question, I thought that I would make a video. And what happens is that when there's a huge energy surge, we're receiving upgrading. That means that the brain is literally being amplified to a higher frequency, like the tissue of the brain, like the neurotransmitters, the serotonin, the dopamine, all of those levels are heightened. They're raised up because of the frequency. That's why when we're receiving a lot of energy, everybody's like, yeah, 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 or it's like, all over the place. And so today, what I call quiet days is when the energy drops. It's like, I'm still getting activations and I'm still feeling things, but it's nothing like it was yesterday. And so the reason why I call them quiet days is because the day after a huge surge, the brain level drops. Not as low as it was before the upgrade because you've been upgraded. The brain frequency is higher, but you're not running at that super high elevated level. So the dopamine, the serotonin levels, all of those levels are lower than they were the day before. And so when we know that when there's less of those items in the brain and then the body, that can cause depression and all of those things. So it makes sense that the day after a huge upgrading that we would feel less than that. And so what I do on quiet days as I get quiet, I don't engage unless I have to, and I choose how I engage whenever I do. And I'm just not as open with my empathy or my energy to absorb that of others, and I just get quiet. And there's a few signs to show what a quiet day feels like. If you wake up in the morning and you just kind of don't feel like yourself and you don't really know what's wrong, but you kind of feel frustrated, maybe a little sad, and you feel off. Well, see, what happens is that before we're aware of what's going on, we attach our humanistic emotions to that, and that causes us to project that energy all day. So we become frustrated easily, we're less patient, we project that onto other people, and we don't have that meditative state of mind. So when I feel like that, I know that that's a quiet day. And plus I'm aware that the day before I was super strongly activated. So the next day I realized that I'm going to be much lower in my brain frequency than I was the day before. And so having that clarity on those days when it feels quiet, because it is quieter in the channel, we're not receiving as much energy. There's a few things that we can do to help ground, balance, and raise that frequency on those days. And some of the things I do, like today, I've had some beats on the TV on YouTube playing all morning. That just like keeps me at that nice flat level of whatever tone I'm listening to. So it automatically is raising my serotonin and dopamine levels, because when we listen to sound tuning, we're raising the frequency of our brain, which is stimulating the neurotransmitters, which makes us happy naturally. That's why it's really important to sound tune. And the other thing is, cannabis is really great, whether you're using CBD or THC or hemp extract. Those things are really wonderful for inflammation in the brain and the body. So naturally, that's going to take the brain to more of an alpha wave, a more chill, laid back level. That's why when you smoke, you get high, or when you eat, it just depends on whether you're using CBD or THC. And, getting out for a walk or listening to just regular music or taking a bath and reading and just, I like to call it mindless activities. I also, on those days, sometimes I'll put a documentary or a movie on Netflix and just kind of keep it light, not really like put too much of my focus on one thing or get too deeply involved in something, because I know that I'm not authentically flowing to my truest level. And usually by the next day, we balance back out. So it's just really that next day. And so just having this clarity about the energy really helps us to maintain the meditative state of mind, which is not attaching emotion to situations and things, and being able to shift and ground it when we do, to get back to that meditative state of mind quickly. I mean, we're still going to feel all kinds of feelings, but it's catching it, realizing if it's foreign, like something from outside, or if it's something that we should look at within ourselves. We always know the answers. Like humans, we're not thinkers. We're receivers of energy. That's why whenever we're quiet, we hear the epiphanies and the guidance and our intuition and all of those things, because that's the channel speaking to you. That's your projected visions that you see within yourself. And so whenever we learn to quiet our mind of the human stuff, we can activate, and really it's just you're hearing your true self, your channel, your guides. And so really, I'm seeing that is what this life is all about, because since I've cleared my mind, we do the initial cleanse, right? That's the ego death, that's the rebirth, that's the activation. And then there's a process of plugging these different tools into life. Like, it doesn't change overnight just because there's some clarity. And, and that's the thing about downloads and upgrades, or whatever we want to call it, when we're receiving new ascension energy. We get that energy, and then it is revealed within ourselves over the next several days to a week. And we'll start to see new synchronicities popping in, new information coming from, how we see things, and it gives us confirmations of the things that were being channeled in our minds. And so all of those things start to line up, and then the things that we want for ourselves start happening. And then that's when we start to see the magic. It's when you're following your vision and your path, and you're thinking about the things that you need in that moment to continue that path, the universe will give it to you. It's amazing. And it may not be in the exact way you thought, but it'll be in the way you need, which is wonderful. Receiving without expectation is how we receive authentically. And then we're able to channel that back to other people. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, we give to others, but we have to give to ourselves first. Meaning that we don't have to stop giving to other people, but we set our energetic boundaries with ourselves and other humans. And then we learn to give, as much of our energy as we want. I know for me, looking back over my life and now seeing my energy and what's going on within me, one of the things that I used to always say is like, I give too much of myself to people. I give too much, I do too much, and I'm not getting anything in return. And it's because I was giving and giving, which is my nature, but I wasn't giving to myself. Therefore, I didn't have boundaries. And since I kind of went to the outside world, and got myself right, now I'm coming back out. That is where the magic has happened. Like, it's not selfish to do that. It's not the wrong thing to do. And it's okay if other people don't understand why you're doing it, because it's not about that. It's about connecting with ourselves. And then we find those who are on the same path. And it's really, really great. And it's just all part of transcendence. And we must understand that through this process that we're going to evolve away from people that we've known and loved and cared about and all of that. And that's okay. We can still love and care about those people, but it doesn't mean that we still have to accept the energy that they give us if we're not on the same frequency. And that's it. It's really that simple. And if you explain that to these people versus like arguing with them, they can't say anything back to you. That's the beauty of being authentic. If you straight up tell somebody, I'm going through my awakening, I've activated my mind and I'm seeing things authentically. We're just not seeing things eye to eye right now. If you want to continue this relationship, great, but I'm evolving within myself. Tell people what you're doing and activate them, because that's how we plant the seeds. We don't have to argue back with someone just because they're arguing with us, because then that means that we're lowering ourselves to that frequency, and that's an unbalanced frequency. It's easier said than done, and it takes practice. It's like one of those things where we have clarity and awareness. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's really just getting in front of our reaction. If we slow down and think before we speak, we generally start to do it in the correct way, in the most simplest way, in a way that feels good to us, to translate the things that we want to say without putting our emotional thoughts on it. Because our emotional thoughts, which is the humanistic side of an unbalanced mind or an unaware mind, we don't realize that we're putting that spectrum of our past lives, of our subconscious mind programming over here, into this new spectrum of our brain, into our consciousness. And so when we take our conscious brain and we look at our subconscious mind and say, how is that mind leading me? Is it creating me? Is it causing me to make good decisions on its own? Is it, easy to communicate with other people? And we learn to see ourselves by the way other people reflect us, how people treat us. If someone is treating you poorly all of the time, you might want to look at yourself and see why A, you're allowing that, or B, what you're doing to create that frequency. That's the process of elimination. It's the ego death. It's recognizing self, not to be defensive and not take responsibility for what's going on. I mean, words from other people hurt when they speak truth. And when we learn to accept that pain, we transcend it and we activate. It's about looking in the mirror and getting real at this stage in our lives if we want to be happy and create the things that we want. Life is not about being pissed off at the world or ourselves or someone that did something from back when. That's over. And when we decide in our minds that we're done with that old, lower vibrating life and existence, we start to transcend and create a new spectrum of energy around us, and that you emanate that to those around you, whether they realize it or not. And so when you become happier, it makes those that aren't uncomfortable. And when we're uncomfortable as humans, when our mind isn't tamed, we react in an animalistic way of aggression. And we must understand that that's why people do that. And so when we recognize that that's why everyone is doing what they're doing, because we're not aware of our minds, we're able to let go, we're able to forgive, we're able to learn balance and master our minds, because that's really what it's about. No one's taught us about our minds, and now we get the opportunity to master it and to evolve and embrace it and form a relationship with our channel, because that's the true mind. The human mind is the problem solver. It's the knowledge mind that we get from the outside world. And so we use the outside world, the conscious mind of what we see, as a tool for the channel to be able to create and work magic. I mean, that's really what life is about, is being able to see everyone and everything in front of you without glossy eyes, without the veil. It doesn't mean that you have to dive into someone's energy just because you see what they're working at. I mean, if you are in tune with your empathy, with your vision, you know what I mean. And we are to use that as a tool for ourselves to create the life that we want. It's the power of influence. Because we're all influencing each other, whether we realize it or not. When you awaken, you become aware of it. So then you're not letting the outside world program you anymore. And you're like, oh. So, and that's why it turns your life upside down. Because it's like, oh my God, nothing is the way I thought it was, but everything is exactly the way I always knew. See, that's the thing. We know what's going on. We know what time it is. And humans don't want to humans, we don't realize that we're not embracing the real reality. I mean, it's just like, there's a lot of documentaries on Netflix. I'll just use this as an example. And I watched one the other day called Plant Pure. I think that was the name of it. And it was amazing. It was about plant-based diets and how all of these participants, every single one, lowered their cholesterol and blood pressure and all of these levels. And I started thinking about it, if you eat meat and you don't want to give it up because you like it, and you don't want to see how your food is prepared before you cook it, then that is a mind that is completely unaware of what it's doing to its body, how it's treating its human. And I understand, because it's like shock and awe, right? It's like we're not prepared for those things because no one's teaching us about it. But if you go and watch documentaries on how cows and chickens are prepared before they get shipped off, you might think about not eating it as much or at all. Like for me, I know I watched how they prepared veal, which are baby cows. And I have not eaten veal in years and years because of that. And so, it's just all about how awake and aware you want to be. And for me, I'm all about real time, real talk, authenticity. You won't get a lie from me because I don't lie to myself. And if I don't know the answer, we'll find out. It's like that kind of thing. I don't believe in telling people that I don't believe and know within myself. And sometimes we get excited and, we may not research something enough or whatever, but our intuition even knows about that. So we learn along the way as we're learning to be authentic in ourselves and be authentic with other people. And it's about being gentle to ourselves during this process and not beating ourselves up, because we're learning how to do everything all over. That's why it's called a rebirth, because you're learning how to think again. You're learning how to communicate. You're learning how to listen. You're learning how to do everything, like all the basic things that you learn as a child. We have to relearn when we are activated in our rebirth, in our ascension process. So if we think about ourselves as a baby and that we have to go back through those steps of growing up, it's really amazing. So it's just about doing what feels good for you. I mean, the whole meat thing, the whole vegan thing is such a huge deal. And, I don't like to say one thing or another about it, but I think this is all I have to say about that, is that be mindful of what you eat. And if you're going to eat meat, be mindful of the meat that you're eating. I look back at the Native Americans, and the Native Americans ate meat for survival because that's what they had. But they weren't, cutting down rainforests in the jungle so that they could grow cattle to feed Americans because so many people are eating meat. Like, that's when it becomes an epidemic, and people don't realize that that's what's happening. I mean, where do you think all this meat comes from to feed all these billions and billions of people? And so we have to take a step back and look to see what is the overabundance. We're in a lifestyle of overindulging rather than just taking what we need. And that's where we get in trouble. In America, when you go out to eat dinner, the plates of food fill the plate. And so at home, you're going to go home and do the same thing. That's why we have such an obesity problem, because people aren't taught about nutrition. We aren't taught about food. And these big companies have now created food that isn't real, and people are waking up and coming back from that. And so, like the Native Americans did, they used the animals for survival. They used the pelts of fur to make money and to trade. And, they blessed their food when they ate it. They didn't sacrifice animals for no reason, for animalistic overindulgences. They did it and blessed the land of survival. And, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a Native American in a photo with a cow. They eat game, lean meat, deer and buffalo and things like that. I mean, if you look back in history, in the beginning times when it was real, you get to see the true spirit of humanity. It's not what it is now, but it is, because it's our existence. And so if we adapt to those ancient ways, which are still here, they're really not ancient, we can bring back and start to regenerate humanity, and that's already happening. And so it just takes the realization that we are evolving, starting back from where we began, and it's really neat. It's really great. People are letting go of all of the outside stuff, and they want to be creative and happy. Money is a good thing when it's used for creativity and to create for other people. And so when we stop thinking about money as a bad thing and how we can use it to create abundance for others, we begin to create it. So, it's just about how we want to manifest for ourselves and what we want to do with the things that we're asking the universe for. What is the purpose? What is the plan? What are you going to do with it? Is it working for you? Do you need to redirect the plan? Like that's the way that I see myself too, and what I'm growing. So whatever path we're on, it's important that we listen to within ourselves, and everything aligns, and it does it in divine order. So humans, we have this unaware tendency to want everything right now, or we're just not satisfied. We're killing ourselves to get to this end goal versus just chilling out and realizing that we're already there. All we have to do is pull it in. It's all there. Like in your mind, if you have a passion, a visualization, something that you desire to do, that's because it's really who you are. But in life, when we're young, we're not taught that. We think that it's supposed to, oh, well, I want to be a musician, but I got to go do this job so I can make that money. And it's because of the outside pressure. And people are transcending that also. And we're seeing that people are becoming more involved in being creative because we've reached a level of capacity of the energy that has been. That's why the ascension's happening. This isn't just happening for no reason. I mean, we're not sitting here having these conversations about DNA activations and entity and channeling and, ETs. And we're talking about all of that stuff as a collective for a reason, because we're changing the frequency. The frequency is being changed, and we are here to assist within that. It's a collective. Everything's connected. Everything. And so when we recognize that, the separation that we have within humanity is programmed by way the world the place that it has gotten to. And technology is a huge part of it, but it came in at the right time, because while we may not be connected on the outside world, we sure are collecting on the inside world here. So it's cool. And now we're starting to collect on the outside. So the collective is gathering, and it's really great. So, on days when you feel lower energy, or you feel a little sad and you're not sure why, or maybe you do know why, just take a few moments to breathe and ground the energy and clear the space, and just know that that's a thought. It's a feeling that's created by a thought that you've had in your mind. That's it. This existence is just a thought. I love you to the moon, family. Have a great day, and Happy New Year.